the feelings of grief.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean literally necessarily a loss of a person, does it? We were talking earlier of how that can be about the moving on of something, and how the body responds to that.
Absolutely. And we've been impacted by quite a lot of changing circumstances, situations, and events, and that it doesn't need to be the death of somebody, although that has happened a lot as well for people.
Yes,
So we're
it
still going to
has.
acknowledge that
Yeah.
today, because that's important. But if it is a relationship breakdown, a friendship breakdown, or a job loss, the one area that isn't mentioned in the cycle of grief, because I really, even though it's helpful, I don't particularly like the stages of grief, because there's more than 5 to 7 stages, and it doesn't happen in a linear way, and we can go backwards and forwards through that process. But what's not mentioned on there is loss of identity.
Yeah.
You know, and if you had lost a partner or a friendship and you've invested a lot of time and support into that, you may not have recognized that you were losing yourself in the process over a
Yeah.
span of years.
Yeah.
If you'd lost a job, that was a huge part of your identity for a long time. So who are you now? What do you do? So loss of identity is huge. And so Jackie and I together, we are going to chat with you about how some of the ways you can recognize those feelings in your body, how you can relax your nervous system using different techniques, and acknowledging those feelings, identifying them to help you get to that phase that we all want to get to, which is acceptance of the situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's accepting that situation, but it can take some of us years before we accept that. And a lot of years. I mean, I was 14 when I lost my mum, and I wouldn't have said until really probably well on into my 30s before I really started to acknowledge and accept what had really happened and how much it impacts your life. And even to today, that made such a huge impact on my family life and all of those things. So, maybe some of the tips and tricks that we know now, if I could have applied them at that young age, what a difference that would have made to all the processes we had to go through.
Absolutely. And yeah, detachment, even though it sounds like such a cold word, it is the key to moving forward, because we do attach our self-worth to those events, because we sit in a place of, why me? Where did they go? Rejection. What happened? What did I do? Especially if there's no closure, there's no explanation.
Yeah.
So to start off with, let's go through the cycle, shall we? Because it is useful. It's a useful framework, and then we can pull it apart.
Yep. Let's do that then. We like doing that, don't we, Sam?
Yeah. So it states that, first of all, you have the shock and the denial. So the first impact of that initial trauma, of the knowledge that something has now gone, and how that then impacts our nervous system and puts us into survival, flight mode, or fight mode.
Yeah, definitely. And fight and flight mode is something, what I've learned over the years, and especially probably in the last year, is when you get problems with your hands or your feet, that is actually a physical symptom, shows you that you're actually is related to that fight and flight mode. So something to be aware of, that if maybe you've got pains or irritable legs, or you've got problems with your hands, then actually, if you look back, that's your body's response. Maybe it's gone internally, and that you're feeling that fight and flight and freeze within you. So that, I thought that was quite a significant point, to actually be able to identify that situation in yourself.
There's two different ways that could potentially happen, I think. Main ways. There's, if your blood is going to quickly flow to your extremities, you're in fight mode or flight mode, because you're getting prepared to run, right?
Yep.
And so what actually happens is, because all the blood is going out to your hands and feet, your digestive system is the issue. It's the one that shuts down first. So you might be experiencing IBS, you might be experiencing all those kinds of heartburn, indigestion, things like this. And what's really happening is your body has an initial shock. Your solar plexus, right just in between your breast here and your breastbone, your solar plexus area is in shock. So Jackie, through tapping, through reflexology, finding your solar plexus, your chakra energy point, finding your solar plexus on your hand or on your feet in reflexology terms is in the same place in the middle, right here.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing, if we're working on some deep emotions with tapping, we will stop and say, okay, stop what we're doing, go back to here and tap here, because that's where we need to remove that seat of emotion that's really got stuck. So if we're looking at that fight and flight, although there are other points that we're going to be looking at that are quite significant, we would come back to this and to the heart, because these are really that where it really gets stuck. So we need to work on those.
And what I think always goes really nicely with tapping or vibrational body work, or when you are learning how to ask yourself, where am I feeling this in my body? How am I reacting? What are my symptoms? Is to blend that with aromatherapy. So we speak about this all the time when we're together, and we always talk about bergamot.
Yep. It's our favorite, isn't it?
Yeah, in that initial shock phase, bergamot and lavender are really, really powerful. So if you can combine the aromatherapy to help your brain accept and help yourself relax and relax into that, then they're really great. And then there's the opposite, isn't there? So it could be that your hands and feet are actually very cold because you feel frozen, and everything is being concentrated into the middle, and so you feel tight. And then that's when you could perhaps feel breathless, shallow breathing, your lungs. And then when we get into like meridians and tapping points in the body, we're working on our lungs, on our face even, or on our cheeks. And when you do the tapping process, it's like, oh, that point feels really good.
Exactly.
So notice which points feel good, because that will indicate and show where.
And also for points maybe feeling quite sensitive, then you know you've actually hit on a key meridian that needs working on, and so you need to help to unleash that blockage. I tend to find, so for example, if somebody's really anxious, then they might find that this one here is actually quite tender, so then they would just rub it rather than tap. We're going to calm the body down. But you might find that's all you can cope with doing for a little while. But that's a really good one that you can just tuck under the table and use, and when you're feeling those kind of feelings. But if you feel it's really painful, then you know, I'm in that fight flight mode, because this is linked to it.
Absolutely. And then then there's denial and bargaining, denying the situation, head in the sand. Let's talk a little bit about that, Jackie.
I think we've all done that, haven't we?
For how many years?
Yeah, for a long time. Stick your head in the sand and it'll all go away. It didn't really happen. And I look back as a kid, and you just shut all those emotions out, don't you? And this is really, it comes into your expertise for trauma, I think, where we shut all those emotions out and we shut down because we go into safety mode, hibernation. We want to protect everything and shield it all and shut it all away. But actually, that's the wrong thing to be doing. And if we can be tapping on those things, those emotions that we come across, and each meridian has a specific, but we talked about the heart, didn't we, earlier? And the heart talking about, it talked about feeling alone and abandoned, which I think is, and unloved or sad, even sadness. some of those things, when we're going through grief, we go through all of these emotions. So instead of now hiding and protecting ourselves and thinking, well, we're going to shield ourselves and try and protect and stay away, we can actually start to tap on those. And we don't have to use words either, do we? We talked about this earlier in something else we were doing. We can then think about pictures and colours. What comes up into your mind, what colour would you like it to be? And we can start to think about and change it from a negative image into a beautiful positive image and move forward with that. And I think so when we learn all these different tools and then associate that then with some really beautiful bergamot, we come back to, or lavender, because they're uplifting and they're really grounding as well. Then you've got that smell, then you can tap with that as well. And so you're then making those associations, because you're great for linking things and making associations with things. And I often use you when I'm talking about things like that, because you say link it to something else. So if you're going through a grief, then find something positive and then link that maybe with a smell from aromatherapy will really, really key point to help you move forward with it, to change that environment in our head or literally.
Absolutely. And as you were talking there, I was watching your body language, and it's so interesting, because straight away when you're protecting yourself, you protect your heart.
Yeah.
And I had a beautiful coaching session with a client recently who feels all of her symptoms up in her head. So we're talking migraines, headaches, tension, hands, upper body area. And how many of us suffer with overthinking, questioning ourselves, not being able to sleep, insomnia, headaches.
Yeah.
And I asked her a very powerful question. I said, why do you think you're feeling it all up here? And she's like, I don't want to feel it here.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah.
And it was like, wow.
Yeah. Because sometimes you want to protect it. Yeah.
And that's it. So how our physical symptoms are showing up, and is very, very likely because we are protecting ourselves constantly.
And the thing is, if somebody's feeling overwhelmed by something, generally that tension is going to be held in the neck, the shoulders, and the head, which is exactly where her pain was, because she was so overwhelmed. She's holding it here because she doesn't want it to go anywhere else. And that's the beauty of tapping and aromatherapy and the things that we do. And talking about trauma and things like that, we can help people then, okay, this is where it is, but then how do we move forward with that? What can we do so that we can actually move it down, put the feelings back that need to be back in our heart, but let the rest go. And I think that's the beauty of you doing body work and trauma release and all of that. And again, the same for me with the emotional freedom technique. We look at how do we move that emotion and help you to let go. Because if we don't let go, we can't move forward.
Absolutely.
We need to learn that, don't we?
And I had no idea the severity and impact of trauma, how it can stay stored in your body. And through trauma release work in your body, it's very similar to a baby, the rocking, vibrations, the hugging, the squeezing of muscles. And it's actually the hands-on is what will help discharge that built energy that your cells have memorized. So it's about having a discharge. So you have to think of it like lightning striking a point of the earth, and how your hands or your therapist's hands, if you are physically getting a trauma release massage, or if you're working on self techniques at home, or if you're asking someone at home to do it for you, the hands help discharge and move that energy through your body. And it doesn't take really hard movements. You don't have to be a qualified masseuse and to know all the bones in the body and how all the muscles work. It's rocking. I'm on a bouncy ball because, you know.
Yeah. Not long.
It's rocking, it's swaying, it's tapping. It's how you would console a baby.
Yeah. And so you're sending that message through to the body, aren't you? You're saying it's okay. This is a safe place to be. This is fine. We can move forward with this. We can change. And so you're creating that environment for the body to realize it's okay to let go. It's okay to move forward with these feelings.
Absolutely. Of guilt and depression in the middle when we're trying to work that out. And I think that the depression is usually linked to self-doubt and questioning yourself because you don't understand the situation or why it's happened, but you are starting to try and work it out. But that's where a lot of us get stuck. How do you feel about that place, Jackie?
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? And that place where people get stuck is generally their liver or their gallbladder holds on to those, and the liver being that one that filters out all of the rubbish out of the body. But that's also a place where our emotions get really stuck. So that's something that we have to think about, and that's where depression is linked with these meridians as well. So we need to balance them out with the heart and the small intestine so that we can create that harmony and that balance in the body. So to me, yeah, they're key points that we need to really think about, that when we get stuck, that actually, why are we stuck? And then to think about, how can I move forward? And then, because maybe we might not know the answers and we might not know how to express it, then with tapping, we can actually do it without words, or if we can start to talk about it, we can start to rewire that negative thought that's got into our head and change that circumstance for us with something positive.
Absolutely. And let's touch on meridians there, because people listening, Jackie, probably don't know what meridians are. They might have an idea. Sounds all very complicated, and it is, because even as experts, we don't know every single point because we're not acupuncturists. It's a very, very, very long degree to study every single point on the body, the map of where you can help release the energy. But with acupressure and meridian points, they're like road maps on your body. So it's like, hit that this one's the M1 and that one's the M6. Right? That's how I see it. I see them as like roads.
Okay. I have a slightly different picture to you, but
it's how my brain remembers things.
Yeah. See, now I see it as a long line coming from your spine down to the bottom, and branches off of that are all our organs.
Oh.
Possibly because a picture in my head is the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
So I see it like a tree with lots of branches. And we've got the head and the root. Yeah.
So there's one point that it's on the edge, the internal edge of your big toe. So the internal side facing your next toe, right in the corner of the bottom of the nail bed, right in the corner on the skin there, is where our liver meridian would start. And as you say, it's liver point 1. It is the liver meridian, and it does help with the cleansing. And so even in nutrition, you know, one way to really help your body cleanse is to liver cleanse and to eat healthily and try and get rid of all the toxins that your body is storing through the emotions. So what you would do is you would push down and hold on to this point onto your big toe for 60 to 90 seconds. And you would then release, and then you would do that 2 or 3 times. And that's the only point that I want to talk to you about today, because it can be overwhelming and there's too much to learn, but it's incredibly, incredibly powerful how such a simple move and technique can just help you feel better. So if I just put my foot up and say to my partner, can you just push this point on my toe and just hold it for me? And you just kind of,
Yeah, hello. It's well, my hubby's always moaning because I'm asking him to do my feet. So just love it. And it makes such a difference.
Well, do you know what? Let's do a video one week where we're talking about partners and how they moan. But actually, come on, that's what I love. I want to see more self-care and massage happening within families because it's too important.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. And another point to go along with that, something the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about lemon and lime and the benefits. Now, the interesting thing is they both are really good for cleansing the body. And lime essential oil. Now, as long as you've got a very therapeutic grade, high quality grade, then they can be taken in a drink if they're on certain oils. So lemon and lime being one of those. Now, they're really, really good for you to take to cleanse the body. So you can do, as long as you've got it in a glass and not in plastic, you can put 1 drop into a glass of water, hot or cold, and you can drink that. That really helps to clear. Lemon's really good for alkalining the body anyway, but lime is also really good for cleansing the body. But it's also good for some of the bacteria as well that we might hold within the body as well, that don't help us with our digestive system. Because going back to what we were saying earlier, the digestive system is key to a lot of these problems. We need to keep it working well, and it's one of those things that become a real issue. And so if we're holding on to toxic relationships or toxic emotions, then that's also affecting our digestive system. So something simple, again, going back to our essential oils, you can also diffuse them, which is a great way because we can breathe all those beautiful smells in anyway that are uplifting, but they're also very, very cleansing as well. So it's another little tip that we can use at home to go along with that.
Absolutely. And I would always say check with an aromatherapist before you do, because of any other preconditions you may have, especially if it's about digesting them. But certainly I know, because I have that knowledge, if I've run out or I don't have any fresh limes or lemons, it's like, oh, what? What?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, what you have to remember is you can always do a slice of lemon and lime, can't you? And essential oil is just that much more potent. So you do have to be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. I did use 1 drop in a big, we're talking, so the volume was so massive. And then it's about getting the volume right, isn't it, Jackie? So that's why you do have to speak to a professional. But there was a big pot of soup and I put 1 drop of lemongrass in, because I was doing a Thai soup and I didn't have any fresh lemongrass. Who can find fresh lemongrass when they need it?
And that's quite potent.
Yeah, it's 1 drop, ladies. 1 drop. So then we get to, hopefully we move through anger, and anger is very much at our root chakra in our hips. And when we are feeling complaints of hip pain, lower back pain, that really is related to anger of a situation. But I wanted to say that these feelings are really good sign that we need to develop a better relationship with negative feelings, that anger is okay, it is good, and it is healthy to move through anger and to feel it and to let ourselves feel it. Very often I find when I work with clients is they want to just be positive and they want to block out the bad feelings. We need to work with the bad feelings and let our body let it out. If we need to scream, we need to shout, we need to swear, what we need to do to let those feelings out, Jackie. So how do you feel about that?
I think acknowledging, I'm not somebody who gets very angry really, so don't always understand that side when people feel when that's built up, that's emotions are built up. So we need to move through them. We need to let them go. We need to find a way in which to let them out. And obviously in a controlled way. Because obviously we don't want to let anger out just because we're really angry and go lashing out at people, but we need to let it out with a purpose. So that we can move through that, whether that be we're talking about it, we're sharing it, we're trying to explain it, or we're just tapping through it. You know, for me, I would look at, we can tap through that. And again, it comes back to the liver and the gallbladder again. They're things that you can tap on, and you can tap and you can talk about how you feel. So you're shifting it and removing it. And then taking it from wherever you're feeling it held in the body, whether that be in your hips or your back or wherever. And then we can talk through moving that forward. So where do you want it to be? What are those feelings? What is it that's holding you back? Looking at the past and being present now, and then moving that forward so that we can actually put it in the future and let it go, so that we can then improve our quality of life and our reactions and responses, because we've dealt with that anger and moved it forward. So I'm not one for sort of screaming and shouting. That's not me. But then other people are. So then other people got to find their way of whether it, you know, you often see people just go out and go, and come back, and then they've let it go. But there are, you know, different ways for everybody's unique in how they deal with it.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about somatic healing. I recently released a PDF on my website. You can find it. It's 42 somatic healing exercises. And I often say to clients, you don't have to do every one. It's about finding what works for you. Somebody might be someone that needs to shout and scream into a pillow to get it out of their system, to help it come through the throat and to express themselves. Somebody else might prefer to meditate or to journal. You know, everybody's different.
Sorry? Something just slid.
And then we move on to acceptance. So they say that's the final stage. But like I said at the very beginning, I felt lost for a very long time. And I felt what I noticed the most was I had no idea who I was. So I couldn't get to acceptance because I had to get through self-forgiveness. And I had no idea that somebody else's departure was really about me and forgiveness of myself and what I had put myself through by my own gaslighting of myself, as it were, a toxic relationship I had with me by blame, shame, all of those guilt, all those feelings. And that actually it wasn't for me about acceptance of the event of someone leaving. It was acceptance of myself as the person, or even knowing who I was. It was more about me. And I just feel like that's not really talked about or explained when we think about grief.
And it's interesting because when we're talking about tapping and we look at our scripts, we're talking about accepting ourselves then, now. And you think acceptance is a huge part of that moving forward. We have to accept ourselves, that we might have done these things in the past. We might have had guilt. We might have had all of these feelings, or felt totally lost, and maybe done things that we maybe wouldn't have done if we weren't feeling the way we were. But when we realize that and we find ourselves again, it's accepting that that's okay to have felt like that. It's okay to have been like that. And once we start to realize that the body is accepting that that's okay, then we can start to move forward to finding our real self again.
Absolutely, Jackie. And I think for me, that's one of the key areas that I work on with women, is exactly this place of acceptance. But we do need to move through forgiveness first, and we can find that incredibly difficult.
And in fact, interestingly, something that I'm doing at the moment with somebody else, and we're working through a set of emotional oils. The first one you start with is forgiveness, because she said if you haven't forgiven you can't work on the rest. And it should be quite interesting. Maybe next time I come back, I'll tell you a bit more, because I've only just started that the last few days. And it's quite interesting because she's saying about you need forgiveness first for you before you can start moving forward on all these other issues. And we have a set of oils, and again it comes back to forests and all of those pine smells and all those really relaxing smells, which are actually really wonderful, but they're also unlocking all of this stuff that you need to unlock. that maybe you haven't forgiven, or for yourself or on others, and move forward from that.
Yeah, and you say I love to make links.
Yeah.
We often hear and we say and we advise that going out into nature for a walk is really good for you. When do you feel the most connected to yourself? And it's when you're around river, trees, those earthy smells, those natural earthy scents.
I hope you can't hear him snoring.
And doesn't it make sense that in order to forgive yourself and accept yourself and find out who you are, you need to go out into the woods?
Yeah, and what's interesting is, in fact, I've just downloaded an app called Calms, and I like the soundscapes on there, and it is just water gushing, wind blowing, and the birds chirping. And you can really sort of relax in that atmosphere. It's really beautiful to listen to. So using that along with your oils, and then going for a walk in that as well, it's just so key to unlocking all of those emotions. It's quite incredible. And like you say, nature is so powerful that we forget that actually really helps us to move forward with ourselves.
Oh, this has been absolutely amazing talking about this with you today, Jackie. And thank you so much, because it's a really hard topic, but I hope that people listening have come up with some ideas of things and tools that they could use to help them move through those feelings. And always reach out to us if you want any extra support or sessions to learn how to do some of these techniques if you're unsure. So I know, Jackie, you have a great tapping program, and you do one-to-one sessions or group sessions, so you can learn how to tap with Jackie. And yeah, I think I'm really pleased we were able to talk about the loss of identity. And I hope that people listening have perhaps got to a point in the conversation where they've heard how they can spend more time working through that for themselves to get back to themselves.
Exactly. And I think you, like me, we've both been there where we've lost our mums. And it can take you a long time to find yourself. Yours was probably a lot later than mine, in the sense of, you were a little bit older than I was. But you still all, it doesn't matter what age we are, we all go through those emotions. And if we can find a better way in which to deal with that, and by us talking about it today, if that helps one person not have to go through some of the grief and the pain that we went through, I think our job's done, isn't it? And I just think that's the amazing thing about the things we've learned now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jackie. Take care of yourself, and I can't wait to have our next conversation together, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Thanks ever so much, Sam. Take care.
Thank you, ladies. See you soon.
Bye.